All right, welcome to the Teachable Soul Podcast. I am moving over to the video platform and I'm so happy to be here. Today with me, I have Summer Bozahora. Is that how I pronounce that?
That is how you pronounce that.
Good. And Naomi Rozak. They are both practitioners in the INside-OWT method, and we are going to learn a little bit about what that is and what that means and how you can use it yourself. Welcome, Summer and Naomi. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
So, Summer, this is your process that you created. Do you want to go ahead and start by telling us a little bit about how you created it and what it is?
Well, I didn't really create it. It's a very natural process. It's a universal one. It really came out of my own healing process because other conventional, even some alternative methods just didn't really work for me. So I found myself getting into some intuitive insights throughout my life as I healed different things like migraines and infections and things like that.
And so how did you start the healing process that eventually led you to all of this?
Well, I think the first time I really started recognizing that my thoughts and emotions actually created my physical reality in a very real sense, in terms of physical symptoms and pain, when I was 24. I had come back from India, and my parents were getting divorced. So there was a lot of emotional anxiety and stuff like that arising from my trip to India, because it was quite a culture shock. I grew up in a really wealthy background, but I felt there was a lot of meaning missing. And when I went to India and saw children who had been, maimed or broken their legs because their parents felt they could make more money, I was just aghast at the disparity between the two cultures that I had lived in.
Right.
So unbeknownst to me, I was having a spiritual awakening. So on my way home, I had chronic childhood eczema my whole life, and it was all over my eyes and my elbow folds. And on the way home in the airplane, I was just so itchy. And I remember scratching this elbow. In fact, I think I still have a scar, yeah. And it started bleeding. And I ended up with a large streptococcal blood infection and large boils because of it.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, they were really big. I couldn't walk. When I had one on my kneecap, I couldn't bend my knee. It was very painful. They were the size of golf balls. They were huge. And I went to my physician. They gave me antibiotics, but they'd give me the antibiotics. They'd go away, would finish the antibiotic, and up would come another boil. So I was sent to the infectious disease specialists at the Foothills Hospital, actually in Calgary at the time. And they did a series of tests on me, and their conclusion was, nothing seems to be wrong. We don't know why you have these boils. Your immune system seems normal. You'll just have to keep taking antibiotics for the rest of your life. And I thought, really? You guys are the specialists and you don't know why? Okay.
Right. And they usually frown upon taking antibiotics for extended periods of time anyway. So that's strange.
Yeah. So and at that time, because my parents were getting divorced and because I'd been to India, I was really experiencing a lot of inner conflict about who I was, who I wanted to be, and the difference in the disparity between how I grew up and how I saw other people in the world living. So I started studying art therapy. I actually volunteered at the crisis center. I got to talk to a lot of people with addictions and sexual abuse and different things. And for the first time in my life, I started talking about my own feelings, which I never did before. I just began my own healing process. As I started doing that, I got an insight as to why I had my boils. It was about repressed anger. And at that time, I did remember being sexually molested as a 3-year-old. And all of that came back to me. It was all held within my body, and my body was speaking to me. So my boils and my streptococcal blood infection disappeared. as soon as I had that insight, and I refused the antibiotics, and I've never had them since, and I have never had eczema either. So started back then with those insights, and then I was starting to understand migraines, physical pain, and thoughts, and how my physical pain would change based on the thoughts that I would have, for example.
Mm.
And it eventually led me to doing a master's degree in spirituality and mind-body medicine. And that's where I was even able to take that work deeper for about 7 years.
Wow. Summer, what is the title of your book?
I love my book, and I could have brought one, but I didn't think to. It was called Soul Side Out. Okay. Universal Laws to Healing and Living Your Best Life.
And I will post a link to it in the description with this podcast episode. But it also has beautiful cover art on it. So if you just want to go look at a pretty picture, you can at least look there. So yeah, I grew up, my father grew up in an affluent family. They were farmers, but for the time it was affluent to be farmers. So they were taught, the same thing. If you have feelings, you don't talk about them, period. For any reason. It's just impolite is what we were taught and what I was taught. And so, yeah, finding out that, not just that it is important to talk about them, but like the reasons why and the things that it can cause if you don't, and things of that nature, are incredibly important. So Naomi is an
intern.
Yes. So how are you teaching Naomi kind of the process and how to guide everyone through it? Because you both are now helping others to go through this process and figure it out for themselves as well, which honestly is just not something I had, while it is intuitive, and now that I've done it with you, I understand that it is intuitive, and all these things that I've seen and felt, my whole life are real things, and they're not just nothing or something to be ignored. But it's not really anything you can Google either,
Yes.
Not yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it took me until, now to figure that out with both of you. So how are you teaching Naomi to kind of guide others through this?
Oh, well, that's a good question. It might be good to ask Naomi that question. There's lots of different things that we've been doing. Naomi, do you want to answer that for yourself? How you've been?
I could, sure. Yeah. I first came to Summer because I was having symptoms in my left eye, and with her, I explored those symptoms and some other life crisis things that were happening. A year later, I had been looking for my purpose for a long time, and Summer's workshop just came across my newsfeed, which is kind of an immersive experience for people. There's a little bit of head knowledge that goes with it so that people can understand like the science behind it and why this makes sense. But then there's 60% hands-on. We all immerse ourselves in it, and we get to practice with each other, one person with one person going back and forth. So I think the primary way I learn from her is actually by watching her, because there's a presence that she gives to her clients that is absolutely beautiful and full of compassion and really just mirroring their human experience that they're going through. She's solidly present with them. So I watch her very carefully every single time she's working with a volunteer in those workshops. And I've now attended 3 of them. So I've had many opportunities that way. And she also sends me the occasional video session of a client with their permission so that I can just watch when she's done an online session with someone. So I think that's most beneficial. That's the primary way that I learn the most. But she also has me doing some writing, which explores more deeply my own, who I am and who I am in this work and why it resonates with me. The writing assignments I'm given are not your university, write a paper, and I just spent 2 years in university, so I know the difference. It's more about what is my heart really pulled towards? Where is my curiosity? What are the questions I have? Now lean into them and read and write and wait for that inspiration to make the picture clear. So that's the second way. Her book is her textbook. So I've read that, and I've read her explanations behind it. She has lots of tips in her book for how people can begin to work with this. And then we have a monthly mentor meeting, sometimes twice a month, sometimes more, depending on what's happening, where we debrief any clients that I've seen. I've now begun to see clients in the last few months. Sometimes there's a sticking point in the session where my lack of experience means that I'm not quite sure where to take it, so I can talk with her about those and we review it. And then we just talk about anything further. She might have more suggestions or a vision maybe of where she wants to take her work. And we go back and forth on that because it's a collaborative process. We're kind of, even though she launched this program, there gets to be a lot of, I get to be involved a lot in what I'm inspired by and where I want to take it personally and in partnership with her. So have I left anything out, Summer?
Well, I think a really key one that's evolved that I really appreciate is actually that Naomi does her own private sessions with me, and she also does sessions for me. So I have to say I'm so grateful that she can hold space for me as well.
Naomi, what made you want to pursue this as like professionally?
I have known for a long time that I am pulled to be with people when they're healing, and not when they're like far down the road in healing, but when they're stuck in the biggest place of crisis or emotion or whatever. That's my call. That's where I want to be. I had gone through a personal crisis several months before I met Summer, where my sister got sick with cancer, and I just spent 2 years in university working towards a psychology degree, and loving the learning, but hating the exams, the papers where you're assigned a topic, the endless hours, and some family patterns and some spiritual trauma kind of came home to roost with me. And I just began to realize I cannot live in this like task-oriented, performative way. I have to learn to live a different way. And I'm very grateful that a friend had recommended Summer to me, because Summer had helped with her son's vision troubles. And I went to see her because in my emotional crisis, my left eye had begun to shut down and it wasn't working very well. Through my time with her, I slowly began to shift from this concrete, logical thinking and task-oriented way of being to more intuition, more heart-centered activities and ways of being. So else, and I began to learn to live life in this intuitive way. I quit my job, which was medical transcription, and was great to bring in money, but was sucking me dry in my soul. And then her workshop happened, and truthfully, I had been to see a counselor. It had helped me hugely with the spiritual trauma and the family trauma that I'd gone through. But Summer's work, I actually saw the counselor and Summer in tandem, and her work helped me to heal from the deepest part of myself, to process that emotion and really learn to change some family patterns. Instead of just changing my thinking about something, this actually changed how I felt and was able to move me forward. So I thought, this is something that appeals to me. It is me sitting with a client, but it's not me telling the client what to do. They get to recognize their own truth in their own energetic and spiritual connection, and I just get to be there as a witness that holds the space for them. And that was something that appealed to me, because even as I was heading to be a psychologist, I had questions of like, can I really do this? I don't really want to look at somebody's life and try to dissect it into pieces to give it back to them in a way that makes sense. Like, I don't know that I have that ability, but I do know how to be with people who are hurting. I do know that. I know that inside out, both because I've been the extremely hurting person, and I've also had different experiences in my life that have put me in that situation. So her work just came along, and I realized this has all the elements of what I'm wanting. And now as I go further in it, I'm like 7 months into my internship, I realized there's the part that I hadn't recognized was that spiritual connection also means something to me. Yeah. And I didn't know that, but as I've done this work, I'm beginning to believe that people can't heal completely without also healing a sense of spirituality. And that's only just beginning to come to me, and for me to understand that a bit more. So that's a new layer that's adding itself into how I perceive this work. That was a long explanation for why I really chose this.
No, that's totally okay. It actually leads perfectly into my next question.
Good.
How do you think this differs? I mean, other than, from your personal experience, but how does this actually differ from psychology or counseling or talk therapy?
First, I have to say that I was hugely helped by the counselor that I saw. I cannot say enough good about it. I came in pieces, And she helped me put my pieces back together enough to get to a functional level again. So that's huge. I think it's different because when we work in inside out, we're leaving that thinking brain to the side, and we're just falling into actual human experience, to a place where not only are we inside ourselves with finding a real truth of what we've experienced, what really happened, not what we told ourselves about it, not what other people have told us about it, but exactly how we experienced what happened. And then the beautiful thing is you're connecting to the energy of the universe, which also puts infinite possibility and infinite creativity in front of you, so that any truth that comes up about where you are in a relationship right now can meet that universal energy and can present any manner of choices and pathways and ways to move forward. But they feel so intrinsically true when they come up in an inside out session that you don't doubt it. And you don't wonder, oh, did that really make sense? Or what the counselor said, I'm not sure if that sat well. Part of it felt good, but the other part didn't feel right. You don't have to do that, because what comes up is the truth from inside yourself. It's not somebody else putting it on you. That to me is the difference. It's work on an emotional level, but it's work about things that you may not even be able to verbalize. And verbalizing is usually important for a counseling session. But in Summer's work, Summer, you can testify to this, that sometimes it's not even verbal. Sometimes you sit with a client and there's silence for 10 minutes while they're in their own world. They're being shown things. They're being given their beautiful truths and images and solutions. And you just sit there in awe with tears streaming down your face as they go through their experience. And I'm not the one showing them what's happening or trying to push them to this other place. I'm just there holding that space for them. So it takes a little bit of the onus off me as the coach or facilitator or the counselor, and says, actually, we're all just human beings. I'm writing this together. We get to support each other in it. But I think there's so many pieces to wellness that just one modality can't do a lot. And I think Inside Out, in a way, cuts to the chase, because it gets to where the pain really is, or what really is affecting you. And it's not a one and done thing. I saw Summer, maybe in my crisis time, I might have seen her 6 or 7 times. And then I started working with her, and part of the practicum is to do a certain amount of sessions with her. And I'm going to refrain from calling them sessions at this point, because now it's become a way of me to connect with that energy, and I can do it on my own. And I think this is a need for people, is to learn how to connect with that place in them that is a source of wisdom, a source of strength, an anchor, and then also a way of being creative and playing and finding out possibilities for where they are right now. And that with practice, people could actually access that themselves. And you're no longer left without tools or without help, and you don't necessarily have to go to see somebody. You can just sit and do it yourself. Now, I like to go and see her because sometimes I work through something a few times on my own, and then I'm like, you know what? I'm just a little bit scared to go here. I want to do it when I have somebody sitting with me, and that presence and that support and that love can help me over that little sticking spot. But I really feel that health is where you are able to take charge of it, and you're able to know what will help you. And I'm learning to be my own advocate in health and just say, thank you, no, I'm not going to do that. And yes, I will do this because this is what's helpful. And just choose that, and not feel that it has to be counseling or medicine, or it can be medicine if that's what I really feel I should do for a while. Just I get to choose.
But being in tune with yourself. Enough to know what you need, and being, like you said, your own advocate to also tell other people what you need. Well, I think, back talking about spirituality, it's kind of a combination of dealing with the mind and what we think and what we believe, but also, you have to heal the spirituality part in order for you to, be able to work properly, or work fully, rather.
Yeah. And I think what's also interesting is that sometimes as people are working through something emotional, their logical brain will actually jump in and say, well, that's all very fine, but what about this? And we get to say, so ask that question, ask the energy that question. And then you get to integrate both. You get to integrate the whole person. You get to integrate the logical side with the emotional side and the spiritual side. And the person can leave that session not only with these emotional or realizations or truths, but also some concrete things that they can move forward with, because you also invited the logical brain in, not in complete control, but in an integrated, everything works together kind of way.
Yeah. So Summer, do you have any thoughts on how it differs from psychology?
Well, I'd have to say that Naomi did a really good job. For me, psychology is really a culturally based because it changes. We have a diagnostic and statistical manual, and it's updated every few years based on our human perception of what people are going through. It's really quite limited by our mental capacity to understand our mental, emotional, physical reality. And I think part of the difference is that inside out, as the word would say, is you're going inside yourself, but you're also connecting to that which is universal and timeless. On our spiritual level, we have connection to that which is timeless. Mm. And so our soul's language comes to us in imagery, comes to us in emotion and feeling. Our body is this conduit for all of it. And our mind has put these limits on what we think that is. And the universe is limitless. And because we have contact to it, we are also. One of the primary differences is that I think psychology kind of skirts around the whole spiritual issue because spirituality is often linked to religion. And so it compartmentalizes things, which is useful sometimes. But an inside out, the language that comes to someone comes to them because the universe is so intelligent. It comes to them in the way that shows the meaning themselves. And in fact, Naomi, in a session that we had recently that was so profound, with her and another client, is that I had a session, and for me, shamans and different people from all over the world were presenting themselves. And for another, the eye of God, different symbols of that came to her. Yeah. But those are the things that resonate with the person themselves, and everybody's different. Yeah. And so the universe is so clever, and it speaks and supports you from who you are. It affects your family. It affects how you do everything. It affects everything. Mm-hmm. In fact, once you heal yourself outside of a time-space reality, if I let go of the trauma of being sexually molested when I was 3 years old, it's like it never happened because it's not in my body anymore. So it's like it never happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And I another great example, I think, is so I'm in a mastermind with Summer, and I had not had a session with Summer before. We just recently did one in the group, and I loved how, we were all asked to focus on the same thing and to think about the same thing, but like whenever we came out of it and discussed what we all saw, they were all completely different things, but they all had the same or similar messages, basically, when it came down to it, that everything was going to be okay, and this is just a season, and it can be scary and big at first, but it's really not if you look at it closely enough. I loved that everybody had completely different perspectives of the thing that we were focusing on, but we were still on the same page. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned your left eye, Naomi, had stopped working. Is it working properly again?
So it does and it doesn't. And it's because through the work with Summer, I've come to see that my left eye prefers not to see as well when I'm stressed or when I'm distracted and I'm busy with my life and I just go on the concrete physical things in life, but I don't take time to just be with myself, or to journal, or to do an inside-out process, or to just be. Because I can do all the busy things, and if I do them but with that presence of just being in the moment, I'm okay. But if I get into an anxious, like looking to the future, worried about the future kind of thing, then I get a pattern of tension around my eye, and it just kind of seizes in, and then my my ability to focus is like when I'm reading or something like that, will just leave a bit. So when I explored with Summer, I found out that that was one of the things that happened. And the other thing was that it was the tension pattern I get goes from like the left side of my butt, and it goes up my back, through my left shoulder, up through my skull, and to my left eye. And it acts like a vise or a robot gears that they're not turning, they're just locked in a grip. And that one is related to people pleasing for me. So thankfully that's shifted a whole lot, but occasionally if I start to worry about what people think, my left shoulder will tense up. It'll go up through my neck and my skull and into my left eye. And that's kind of an energetic or emotional pattern that affects my vision as well. And I didn't know that stress and beliefs and emotions and trauma can also affect your eye. In fact, trauma is a big part of things that can affect vision. And my eyesight first changed after my parents got divorced when I was 7 years old. And that's within a year or two, I was diagnosed with a lazy eye in one eye. And that's my left eye. So what I've come to do is to see it as my barometer of how I'm actually doing. And if I notice that I'm carrying tension or my vision goes blurry and I can't see words, then that's my signal to dial it back and to just be with myself and be in my life instead of worrying or stressing about something. So yes, it has improved. I used to wear quite strong glasses and mismatched prescriptions. So like a +3, 3.5 in my left eye and almost no prescription in my right eye. We reduced a prescription right away, and I just wore those glasses occasionally, and I no longer wear glasses at all for driving. In fact, my glasses were stolen. My driving glasses were stolen out of my van, which were the really strong ones. So I haven't been able to wear them. And then my reduced prescription ones, I use them for reading like really close up to my face for a while, and now I don't use anything because I don't need them.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. Before I also went down a similar journey and stumbled upon Summer along the way, I also was having, personal crises in my life. And I mean, part of that was caused by my father had just recently gotten cancer. I found out he was sick and passed away within a couple of months. But yeah, shortly after that, once I was finished going like through the holidays and stuff, I started having like blurry vision as well, but with both eyes at the time, and it was quite an experience. But yeah, ever since I've just decided to kind of drop everything and do what's best for me,
what your soul wants.
Yeah. and started exploring, what that actually is, because for a while I had not realized that was necessary. It's interesting how that works. I had never even considered that physical, like you go to the doctors and they tell you, well, are you stressed out? And they ask you these questions and you're like, well, I mean, probably, but isn't everybody stressed out at one point in their lives? Like, what does that have to do with anything? I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, and here's an interesting thing is that, so it's my left eye that can give me trouble. I try to be very respectful in how I talk about it because it's a part of me.
Yeah.
But as you started talking about how you were being affected in your realizations, my vision sharpened in my left eye just as you began talking and saying your last little bit there. So it's a very like energetic and emotional thing for me. I guess my left eye can mirror my emotional state. And whenever people begin talking about something that's really important or very personal to them, I noticed immediately it's like my whole vision shifts for both eyes, and I just get a sense of everything being sharper and clearer, and it's kind of my little tell that I'm where I like to be.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's funny that you mentioned that, because so part of the reason I started the podcast in general was because I realized that I was incredibly depressed. And it was, due to, like I said, my father passing and a numerous amount of other things. But it was kind of a series of fortunate, positive events that led me to, okay, I'm going to start a podcast. On days where I don't actually have deep in-depth conversations with people are days where I notice my energy is a whole lot lower. But as soon as I have a good conversation with a person or do a podcast recording or something, I am ready to go and do anything and take on the world, and I'm totally fine.
amazing.
So
it's your soul work.
well, thank you ladies both for joining me today. I really enjoyed having you, and thank you for explaining the processes that you both have been through, and I look forward to more future conversations with you both.
Thank you, Kat.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
It has. Thank you so much. Soon. Bye.